all of you that are doing businesses, it is, it has to be a passion and the persistent and drive to make it work. I mean, there's no let up. I mean, there's always going to be people taking, time off and not putting all the energy in. And I just think to have a chance to be at the table with you have to just commit everything.
3, 2, 1. So the next two people I'm going to introduce you to are entrepreneurs, and they built one of the fastest growing popcorn brands in the world. Boom Chicka Pop. I know how many know about Boom Chicka Pop. Well, we got a lot of fans out there. So this couple, literally, they began with nothing. They began with spending about $8,000 or $10,000, as they'll share with you, to get this little device. Thought they're going to sell popcorn on the weekends so they could find a way to really take care of their children's college education. In fact, they've started beforehand, 6 months beforehand. They got the idea. They came to my Unleash the Power Within event. I just found out. I met them backstage, and it really gave them impetus, they said, to really get going. So they built this. We're going to take you on the journey of how they built it. And then for the first 8 years, very similar, they didn't make a dime. They didn't take a penny. Angie, the wife, was still working as a nurse so they could pay for their rent, and Dan's working around. They're both working around the clock. She'd leave nursing together. They go on the weekends in freezing cold in Minnesota in a tent, cooking popcorn, at sporting events. And 16 years later, they sold the company for $250 million. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Angie and Dan. Boom Chicka Pop. Oh, yes. Well, I'm so glad you brought some product here. That made your visit worthwhile all by itself.
Just never show up empty-handed.
That's really smart. Well, it's great. I got a chance to meet you backstage briefly here. Tell me a little bit, before we get into your journey, I want to know how the two of you met, because a lot of couples work together and want to kill each other, especially, during COVID. My wife and I have the privilege of working together and love each other and have a blast. But tell me a little bit, how'd you guys meet, and at what point did you decide you wanted to go into business together?
Well, I was a nurse working in a mental health clinic in Gallup, New Mexico, and Dan was a school teacher working in high school. He was a history teacher, and we met in his uncle's kitchen in 1992.
How did that happen?
Yeah, it was a little shy. I walked into the kitchen. It's like, oh my gosh. Didn't know Angie was living in Gallup, New Mexico. So it was great. I mean, we were both kind of on a journey at that time. I was teaching. Just gotten back. I was spending a couple years out of the country. And Angie, we were just kind of on a journey trying to figure out our paths. Even at that time, I was teaching, and Angie was a psych nurse. So.
And I heard, I don't know if the story is true, but I thought I read somewhere that you had injured your jaw. Your mouth was wired shut when you met?
I was wired shut. I had fainted and fell flat on my face, broke both condyles, and I was wired shut. And I didn't have an insurance at the time. I had just finished grad school, and it was sort of my first job after that. And I made a deal with the hospital to work off my bill, so I stayed there and worked in Gallup, New Mexico. And so the social worker that was on my unit was good friends with his uncle, and he said, you should come over to this house and meet my friends. And so I went over, and I was, talking like this with a wired jaw. And he said right away, oh, you broke your jaw. I broke my jaw in college. He was a baseball player and had taken like a ball hit to his face. And so
we had something to chat about. I felt for Angie. I understood what she was going through at the time.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine trying to eat more liquid foods and things of that nature. Or
a straw.
A straw.
A straw, yeah.
So you guys connected from the very beginning.
Yeah, over trauma, right?
Over trauma.
Jaw trauma.
So how long after that you started dating, and then how long did you get married? And
yeah, we dated for a couple of years, and then we got married in 1994 in New Mexico. We had 2 children, and we kind of moved around a little bit in New Mexico. Eventually, we made the decision to move back to Florida to get closer to family. So Angie's family is in Sarasota, Florida.
Okay.
And so, my family was in Minnesota. I never anticipated moving back at that time. But yeah, we
And you started, I understood, is that when you started your first business, was here in Florida? Did you do that business together, or was it just one of you?
It was just Dan. I was running a community mental health clinic as a
Okay.
nurse practitioner for Sarasota County, and Dan was staying at home to take care of the kids. He
yeah I
was
stayed
Mr.
home
Mom.
for 3 years with our
And he
kids.
sort of dabbled in starting businesses on the side, like doing a little bit of golf event planning and things
Yes.
like that. He just always had the itch and was always a little restless.
And what made you move back to Minnesota or move to Minnesota? You have family there, if I understand.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it was after your event in the spring of 2001. We were just, I had told you I was struggling with some health issues a little bit, and I saw your piece on CNN, and I was like, I need to go see Tony and his team. And so I flew up to New Jersey and went to the event, and Angie ended up going. I just had an incredible experience.
You thought it was just a health event.
I just.
What'd you think when you walked in that stadium with all these people going crazy?
It was like, oh my gosh, what am I getting myself into? Because I thought I was just going there to get some health support there, but it changed my life. And Angie, I told her when I got back, you have to go. And 2 weeks later, she was out in California in San Mateo or something.
Yeah.
And so at that point, we came home and said, we need to act. We talk. I've been dabbling around business, and one of the things, walking out of your seminar, your event was, facing your fears. And I think, I've always been incredibly motivated and driven. I had a passion for kids and making a difference, but I had this itch to go experiment in something else. And but I think Chris talked about, I struggled with in school. I had ADHD. I was not a great student. Learning was really hard for me.
Yes.
And I fortunately got to college and I fought my way through. But there was a lot of baggage that I struggled with, just even like public speaking was terrifying for me because I thought it was dumb.
And you're going to be a teacher.
And I was
You were a history teacher and a coach, is that right?
I was a teacher and a coach, and I could relate to all the kids that had challenges, and so I loved them,
that's
and
cool.
I would help them,
That's cool.
and so. But when it got to on the big stage or something, or I had to present, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do this. And so when I went to your place, your event, it helped me like, okay, I need to work through this. It's not going to happen. I need to hold myself accountable, and there's going to be train wrecks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens, right? I mean,
yeah.
and we're still working. I'm always working through it still today, so.
Yes, that's part of life.
Yeah.
And then, Angie, you were great in school, I understand, though, weren't you? Were you?
I loved school.
Yeah, you loved school.
I
That's
did.
interesting.
I did. I loved it. So I kind of grew up on a farm in northern Indiana, and there wasn't a whole lot to do, and there was
And
a lot
you
more to
grew up
do
in a
in school.
Mennonite family, if I understand.
Mennonite family.
Mennonite,
My
yes.
grandparents were Amish on my one side, and so I grew up in a very small world with very sort of small ideas about what the world maybe should be or shouldn't be, and so I as I grew and I was. I got a college education and I became a nurse, and I just longed to learn, and I just kept trying to learn and learn as much as I could and experience as much as I could, and eventually got to grad school, and it was exciting for me, and then just meeting Dan, his compassion for me and my broken jaw, was
that's
just
beautiful.
Yeah, it was lovely. And he was so kind, and we just kind of immediately connected and complemented, his skill set and my skill set. And we just, part of what happened when we started getting this business going is we just wanted to do something together.
Yes.
And we just wanted to do it with our children to sort of teach them, and because we both learned through experience, and we just wanted them to experience it with us. And that's kind of what motivated us and why we started, popping popcorn on street corners, because it was pretty simple, and we thought we couldn't mess it up, and, we could do it together.
Well, so the passion was you doing it together more, because popcorn wasn't necessarily your passion, I guess, right?
Not
I mean, I read your mother made popcorn on Sundays, but it wasn't your.
That was
My
Ange,
mom,
yeah.
Your mom, yeah.
we ate popcorn on the farm, every
Yeah.
Sunday night,
But it wasn't a passion necessarily.
No, we were trying to get started on something. I mean, it was like I could still teach, Ange could still work in psych, and we could do this on the weekends in the summer where we would just travel, set up our tent, popcorn at the fairs or at the Minnesota Viking games or what have you. And
But let's talk about that just for a second,
Yeah.
if we may. So the impetus for this is you moved back to Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's cold as hell. Have you ever been in Minnesota before?
I had never lived in the
First time I showed up in
Minnesota.
Minnesota, I went for a business meeting. I had no coat, and it was winter time, and it was like minus 35. I had my own education as a kid.
Yeah.
But so you get to Minnesota, it's freezing cold, and then you're looking for a business. Did you look at several businesses? And then I read at some place that you were looking on Google or something and saw you could make $1,000 a week in popcorn. Sounds like a scam to me.
Right.
But tell us the story.
Well, I'll just jump in and share my part. But when we went back, we were thinking of, we were kind of, after your event, we wanted to become healthy.
Yes.
And we changed our diets, and it just changed a lot of things personally. And so we were thinking, maybe a food co-op, some type of healthy restaurant, whatever. And we just realized I had no experience in it. I didn't want to put the time necessarily into put years into learning how to run a business. I mean,
What's the capital for a restaurant?
Right, exactly. And so I would teach during the day. Ange would stay home with the kids, and I'd get back at 5 o'clock-ish, and Ange would go off to work. She worked at the state hospital. Wow. So we figured out a way for our kids. One had started school, and one was still with us. And every night after the kids went to bed, I would go online looking for different types of businesses that we could do together.
This be what year?
This was in 2001. This was in October of 2001. And so after about a month of this, all of a sudden I got pushed to this website that showed popcorn popping and said, make thousands of dollars every weekend popping kettle corn. And I thought, okay, I'm going to dig a little bit because it was kind of funny that the whole website was. And I thought, you know what? I called Ange up and I said, Ange, I think for like $8,000 we can buy the kettle and the tent. They can tell us how to do this. I can still teach. I can do this on the weekend. We can get connected. So that was kind of how.
I want to hear. So what was your response when he says, what do you think about a popcorn business on the weekends when you're working jobs in the middle of the night, kids in the day? What was your reaction to that?
Right. I was like, sure, let's go. Let's do it.
That's awesome.
Let's do it.
Because you're going to do it together.
Yeah, we're going to do it together. And it was,
simple.
We just wanted to start doing something, and it felt like, hey, we could do this,
And you started in your garage, right? Is that right?
We did.
Yeah.
We started in the garage. It was sort of my job to get the license, figure out what kind of business I ordered. Back then, they had you could call the state of Minnesota, and they would send you a book about this thick, how to start a food business. And so I poured over that book, and then got the right license, and so we were a mobile food unit, like a concession stand that would go to fairs and festivals and farmers markets and amateur baseball games, all those kinds of things. And the first
would you do this in the summer, or would you do it in the winter? Was it cold?
We did it in the winter too.
In a little tent outdoors.
Yeah.
We oftentimes we would pop it, we'd package it, and then go to like the Civic Center for a hockey game. And so it was funny because here we're both professionals in the community. I'm a teacher, Ange is in psych, and we oftentimes have this big tent. We're popping corn, or I'm schlepping corn up and down the ails at the game, and we got a lot of
people looking at us sideways, like,
because they recognize you.
Yeah, what are you doing? They were like, what are you doing? Because because I think the message was, you're kind of humiliating yourself by doing this.
Oh, that was kind of what they said.
Yeah, it was kind of like, why are you doing this? And we were, and Dan would be like, we're building a popcorn business, and people would say, well, go for it. Okay, like if you believed in it, they would believe in it then. And it would just kind of shifted the way people, but still, people thought we were crazy, kind of.
And did you make thousands of dollars a weekend, like it advertised?
No. The first time we sold, we made $300 that night. And
I read that someplace. Was that in Minnesota?
It was in Minnesota. Yeah, the night before Thanksgiving, in front of a grocery store, and that was our first day in business.
Wow.
So that's what we did for the first 2 years, is just set up a tent, go in the corner somewhere and pop, and then we transitioned.
And then, so if I read correctly, you got a break where you were going to work with the Vikings during their camps, I understand.
Yes.
So there are people there that you could sell to, and you end up, I understand it, giving the popcorn to the players. Tell us the story of how that kind of opened up for you.
Well,
It's a proximity issue.
Yeah,
that you're
proximity.
talking about.
Dan, and it was in our hometown. They had training camp, and we just felt like we wanted the players to notice our product. And it was not. I mean, we were selling $3 and $5 bags to the spectators that came, but we just wanted to elevate some kind of exposure. And we didn't understand marketing. We weren't in business, but Dan was a huge Vikings fan, and we just thought it would be fun if the players ate our popcorn. And it was like Randy Moss and Dante Culpepper.
Oh, during that time.
All
Yeah,
that
wow,
time.
yeah.
And so we just started making phone calls, and in the dormitory where they stayed, and somebody said, yeah, sure. They called us back and said, we'll take the popcorn as long as it's free. And
that must have been a big decision, sort of, in the beginning for you guys.
well, it was a big investment, 120 bags, for us.
But it was more kind of tying into your point about proximity, like who you're putting yourself in proximity to.
Yes.
And we knew that, hey, if we want an opportunity to get followers, it'd be great if we could have access to 60,000 fans a game, or, at training camp, thousands of fans. And so, not that we were always aware, but we always realized, this is going to be all about relationships. And I think both Ange and I were really good at that, of like connecting with people and building bonds, and, just delivering when we committed to something.
And when the players loved the popcorn,
they did. And then the sales and marketing team came around and asked us if we wanted to be the official kettle corn of the Minnesota Vikings. And,
wow.
we felt like we won a prize, right? But what we didn't understand is that's like a revenue stream for
they're going to charge you.
Yeah, they're going to charge us to be there.
How much do they want to charge you to be the official?
I think that first year, $8,000, $8,000 to $10,000, to have we were a little mom and pop company, but what we asked for then was if we had the ability to sell in the Metrodome in front of every home game, because they had this big party, whether you're in a blizzard.
Oh, so the tailgate, right? The
yes, right. And so we were able to break even, and the NFL is an incredible marketing machine, and we just watched and learned and took every advantage that we could to partner with them. And anytime they picked up the phone to say, hey, we have a VIP event, can we have some popcorn? And we would say, absolutely.
Over deliver always.
Yes.
And now I read, is this true that you didn't take a paycheck? You worked continuously to help pay the bills.
Right.
You worked continuously with the business. You worked continuously on the business besides the psych nursing.
Right.
And I read that you didn't give yourself a check for the first 7 or 8 years, and then it was like $500 or what? What's the truth in that?
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's exactly.
So 7 or 8 years, you're out freezing your ass off, delivering popcorn, and did you just keep putting money back in the business? Is that why?
I mean, any money we made, whether it was on the, because, we transitioned, we were still an outdoor mobile unit for the first 10, till 2010 and 11. But in 2004, we transitioned to packaging it and wholesaling it out to retail outlets.
Okay.
And so that's what changed after a couple of years of just doing outdoor events. It was like, I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life.
I can imagine.
We did it as a marketing tool, outside of grocery stores, where we built a team up that would go around and doing that. But yeah, any money we made went back in, and we were fortunate that Ange was working that could help us pay the bills, and we still didn't really have any inkling. I mean, there was a situation in 2005 where someone was interested in buying it, and we were probably $250,000 business, and it was like, you can have it. but it fell through.
I'm glad you didn't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
So we just kept being persistent, and we kept growing and kind of learning on the job. And Ange was an incredible. She was working all day. She was helping with the kids. She was working all night. I mean, it was just, anyone who's, all of you that are doing businesses, it is, it has to be a passion and the persistent and drive to make it work. I mean, there's no let up. I mean, there's always going to be people taking, time off and not putting all the energy in. And I just think to have a chance to be at the table with you have to just commit everything.
And I read that in the early days you had some people that you hired that were really kind. You both are really kind human beings. It seems to be that's part of why your relationship flourished in the middle of all this intensity and difficulty. But did I read correctly that you had like a couple that came to work with you and You said we can pay them $8 or $4
Oh,
an
yeah,
hour.
yeah.
Well,
They were
tell me a
really
little bit about some of the early employees you had initially. And then one more thing, Angie.
Yeah.
I read that your dream was if you could get on the state fair, and they turned you down
Right.
before you got any real retail. Tell me a little about the early days of the people, and tell me a little bit about how did you discipline your disappointment? Because business is full of disappointments in the early days.
Right. Well, early on, every bit of money that we got from the business for any sale we put back into the business, and very quickly we had opportunities, and what we did early on was say absolutely yes to every single opportunity. We then said, let's figure out a way to do this. So in 2004, when we got this opportunity to go into grocery stores, we quickly pivoted. We found a commercial kitchen. We bought some new equipment. So now we're going farther in debt, instead of, kind of realizing, hey, where's this college fund money coming from? It's going back into the business right now. And we hired a bunch of college students part-time to help us pop. And then we had one of the baseball coaches from the local university. He was a third grade teacher, and his wife had just retired. And he was just a crazy, funny guy. And full of energy, and they said, we just want to work together, and we see how you guys are working together. Can we do something to help you? And Don and Jeannie, we said, sure, come, you can do demos for us, because that was part of our sort of plan is to
Like to go to grocery stores?
Grocery stores, and we were the
Give
people
people
standing at the sample table, saying, hey, try our product. This is who we are. Okay. And so Don and Jeannie started doing that for us, and then delivering in the back of the stands and back of grocery stores, and we couldn't afford a salary, obviously, and so they said, well, we're happy to do this for free, but if you have any way to pay us, that would help. And we said, well, we can afford $8 an hour for both of you. And they did because they wanted to do something together. As the business progressed, and we built the business, we began expanding distribution, we took on private equity, we built an equity pool. They got equity in the business, and
that's wonderful.
and we were able to pay them back in ways that
multiplied many, many times.
Yes.
Tell me about the fundraising along the way as well. I read, again, I don't know if these are all accurate. Sometimes they're old wives' tales. I want to make sure they're accurate. But I read that you went to like a babysitter of yours and said, can we borrow some money? Tell me a little bit about the escalation of money. And I also know at one time you were about to go, as I understand, you were about to have a real breakthrough going to Trader Joe's, but you didn't have the money for the order that they wanted. So before you tell me Trader Joe's, tell me a little bit about the early fundraising you did, where it came from, how you did it.
Well, we used 0% credit cards to fund the first part of the business. And we just kept kind of going deeper and deeper into debt. And then we had a family friend that gave us a $50,000 loan to pay off those at 8% interest, which we were doing as we started getting more traction in grocery stores. And then we needed to build out a plant, and we needed to invest in the equipment. And it was around 2007. And, we were in a small town, and there were community banks. And we had, I don't know how many.
Were they ready to loan you money?
No. Oh, God, no. No,
they never loan you money when you need it, only when you don't need it, right?
But we finally, we had this plant already getting built out, and we had already sort of moved before we, just because, I don't know, this is part of what we've learned as entrepreneurs. You may be moving before someone catches up with you, and then you find a way to get those folks to catch up with you, including the banks in some way. And finally, we had probably 12 banks tell us no, they're not going to loan us money, and finally, one of our babysitters, dad, was the branch manager in town, and we called him on Sunday night, and he said, yeah, come in the next morning. He sat down with us. He had an SBA loan officer there and the president of the bank, and really they started walking us through like kind of the data they needed, and we admit we weren't probably a good unrisky bet for them, but it was because of the relationships that we had that they took a flyer with us.
And what did they loan you initially?
I think it was about $1 million to do the build out.
That's pretty big.
And then a line of credit and we're operating
but I mean,
capital.
I think, adding to what Ange is saying, there are so many like roller coaster moments of like, is this going to go? Is this going to happen?
Yeah.
Where
how do I make payroll?
It can be terrifying, and it's like, I think what Ange and I, partly because we had each other, which was helpful, but just that commitment to when you think everything's against you, it always just seems like there's always a solution, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
There's always a yes somewhere. You got to find it.
Yes.
You got to find it. And so we had probably $150,000 line of credit to get us through the year 2007 into spring of 2008. We had landed Trader Joe's. Okay.
How did you get Trader Joe's?
Because they called the buyer like every day for 6 months.
So they gave you a deal just to shut you up, give you a test.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of like that. I mean, I was just kind of relentless and not obnoxious, but maybe a little bit. But I eventually got her in her office, and she said, "Yeah, Dan, I've gotten a few messages from you," but I was able to say.
You sent her the product.
I sent her the product, and then I overnighted her
bags.
product the next day, fresh product, and she said, "You know what, Dan, I appreciate it. Let's talk." We were able to lock that in, but there's a process, right? It doesn't happen overnight. We had $150,000 to get us through the year to pay our staff.
Wow.
We had a new build out, $1 million, and so like.
How much business is the business doing at this point?
The business was probably doing about $1 million at that time.
Oh my
God. So there was a lot of pressure. It's like, so all of a sudden we're getting to Christmas time. They're signing off on it, but there's no guarantees. There's always, they want it to come see our plant. We're a startup. And all of a sudden it comes down to the spring and probably March or April, and we're more or less out of money. And we have these POs.
Well, it's 2008 when the whole world economy was going down too, simultaneously.
There was no credit available.
I mean, it was thank God our bank friend gave us a loan, because 6 months later we would have been out of luck. I mean, there was just a lot of good fortune that happened to us when it did. But so we all of a sudden got like 20 POs from Trader Joe's, which was probably $500,000 worth of.
It's like 25 trucks there.
Yeah.
Is that right? Full of popcorn.
Right.
Yep. But we didn't know how fast we're going to pay. We needed to pay for supplies. We had to pay for popcorn to fill these 25 trucks.
Plus, they don't pay you up front, right?
Right.
They pay you in 60 days.
Right. So all of a sudden, I got this in the mail, another credit card, $100,000, Capital One thing, and it was we called them up, they wired us the money, it helped us buy the supplies.
So you literally, if I understand it correctly, you could have gone under at that time because you didn't have, you had the option, but you didn't have the money to be able to fund it.
Yes.
And this credit card shows up.
Well, back then, they advertised all the time, right? Well, it was, they were advertising and soliciting credit card. But because of our personal credit that we had been able to keep
Kept it strong.
in really good and pristine order, we had these opportunities to use that credit cards as sort of a way to factor and finance in crisis points. And every banker we ever met with just kept shaking their head at us.
It was 0%
like, don't do that, don't do that. But it's how we did it.
Yeah, it was free money for us, and we managed it okay. And
Wow.
Yeah.
And then they loved the popcorn. It took off?
So we had enough to buy the supplies, and they ordered more trucks, and all of a sudden, we jumped from $1 million to $5 million in sales that year because of Trader Joe's. And it just opened the door to help us finance our Angie's Boom Chicka Pop brand.
So let's talk about that, because you originally were the kettle popcorn.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is, Angie, where your genius comes in. I mean, neither one of you have any business background, but your own creativity and your own ability just to feel what consumers would want, especially women. Tell us a little bit about, you started a fund at that point. Did you get some funding from a venture capital firm at that point? And then tell me about the name change.
Yeah.
How that came about.
Yeah. We entered into a relationship with private equity, a company called Sherbrooke Capital out of Boston that discovered us. And, they came into a minority position. They helped us figure out how to create an equity pool for our employees, because we really, at that point, we had said, like, we want our success to be our employees' success, but we didn't know what that meant or how to do that. And they helped us do that. We needed a sales execution team. We needed more marketing. There were things we needed that money couldn't buy, in a sense. Like, we needed networks and their expertise. And we knew at the time in the marketplace, the competition was exploding in natural and organic snacks, and popcorn was one of those categories. And we just knew we wanted to be more. And so what I didn't know about marketing and what we didn't know about marketing, we just went to the stores. We went to where popcorn was sold. We went to where our product lived. And I'm told this is contextual marketing research, but I would spend hours walking up and down shelves where natural and organic snacks were sold. And I began to notice things. I began to notice that every natural and organic snack was very, very serious looking. It was very, anything that was very sort of permissive looking had this sort of male, masculine color palette, or very serious, earthy kind of color palette. And it was, like, eat this, it's really wonderful, good food for you. And then there were
names like Orville Redenbacher
yes, there were
all male names too.
Yes, it was Vicks and Orville and Dale and Thomas, all those ones. And
Harry and David.
And Harry and David, all of that. And that's kind of why we named it Angie's, is in the very beginning, is just because I was like, where are the popcorn women? There's no women on the shelf.
I love that.
So Dan was like, well, let's name it your name. And I was like, so proud. There's a woman right there, on the shelf. But then when it came to like rebranding, we didn't have a lot of money for marketing, so our packaging had to do a lot of work. And what I really wanted was to capture people's attention. And that's why I was in the stores just trying to understand because you have 2.5 seconds to capture someone's attention as they walk through. And that was before people began shopping with their phones. And, and so we were like, how are we going to do this? And what I noticed also is that there were other kinds of positions of marketers and advertisers talking to consumers, like children, and it was playful and lovely, but the packaging that was what I felt like that was talking to women in snacks were about, we are obviously on a diet, so here is your food. And it was sort of reductionistic, I thought. Yeah. And I just felt like, hey.
Not celebratory, not enjoyable.
No, not full of energy and empowerment and dimension. And, I just said, let's do this differently. Let's come from a position of empowerment. Let's celebrate, what I'm not seeing on the shelf, which is sort of a feminine color palette. Mm-hmm. And let's come from a place of respecting that person and their sense of self and empowerment. And let's create dimensionality in this. And let's, because I don't know, you hardly ever saw back then females in advertising that, or in any kind of ads that didn't present women eating as a moment of conflict or as a sexualized behavior. And I was personally annoyed by that. So I wanted to celebrate women and food in the same moment. And so we went to a creative agency that just said, help us do this. How do we come from, instead of, we can deliver the same product, low calorie, non-GMO, organic and or natural, depending on what the stores want. And let's just do it in a way from a position of positivity and empowerment. And let's do it in a way that people just stop in front of it and go, what is that?
Yes.
Let's respect these people, that they can read and that they might be curious and that we can elicit curiosity. And so this creative agency helped us do that. And when we rolled out this yellow bag in 2012, and within 4 months, it became our #1 selling SKU.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about the name, though? What were some of your options that they came up with, and how did you end up with Boom Chicka Pop?
Well, we had, again, a creative agency, a marketing agency help us with renaming, because we wanted to be more than kettle corn. So, and I'm going to say, I've never said this in public before, but one of the things that I remember about Unleash the Power Within is you talking about hitting all the senses.
Yes.
You know, like it immerses you in that experience. It gives you like the sound, the smell, the taste, the sound, all of that.
Yeah.
And in my vision for what a package could be, I wanted to hit all the senses that I could.
Yes.
That was on the shelf. And Boom Chicka Pop kind of achieved that in terms of the name. It was almost.
What were your options, though? I'm curious.
Yes, they
by
were really
comparison.
boring. They were like she popcorn, or just like boring names that were kind of. It had no energy, actually.
Yes.
And this one, we had this young team of very brilliant marketers, and they came out at it with Boom Chicka Pow Pow was the first one.
Yeah.
And we all started laughing, and there was immediate energy in the room.
Yes.
And then these were the days when we all like worked in one table.
Yeah.
In one small office, and we had a business analyst at the end of the table eavesdropping in our meeting. And when these young marketers left, he goes, Boom Chicka Pow Pow is 70s porn. and we just said, okay, we can't do 70s porn. And by the way, how do you know this, TC?
Yeah, how do you know it's
We were like, so we kind of had a good laugh.
Good question.
Yeah, we had a good laugh about that. And he said it was because he watches Friends, and Friends, they were always teasing the women on Boom Chicka Wow Wow.
That was a
anyway.
good excuse.
Yes, right. So we just said, there was immediate energy in the room. There was people talking about it. We were laughing. It brought energy. So we just said to the creative agency, fix it, connect it to the product in some way. So they came back with Boom Chicka Pop. We launched this from start to finish in 6 weeks, product, everything in order, and launched it. And that's
Was
the story.
Was the Chicka an honoring of women in a playful way?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It was
really
like
cool.
reclaiming, the energy that's associated with it.
When that happened, it changed our company went from, is it going to happen, to how big is this going to get?
Wow, it was that big a change.
Yeah.
Well, my mother-in-law, I was speaking to her last night, and I told her you guys were coming, and I was going to be an interview. And she's 81 years old, young, and she got so excited. She goes, that's the only popcorn I'll have. And she goes, if anybody gets the popcorn and they bring something else back, I give it away. She says, my only complaint is I guess she likes the white bag or those cheddar stuff.
Yeah.
She goes, they don't have it in stock. It's always sold out. She says, I'm always searching for it. But she made me say, please tell them how incredible their product is. She goes, I probably eat too much of it, but I love it so much, right? She was literally euphoric on the phone that I'm going to have a conversation with you. So that's the kind of energy that I hear when I talk to people who use your product. It's amazing.
And it's popcorn, right? Like it's popcorn. And we've talked about like the design and how we didn't invent popcorn.
Yeah.
We just saw something in the marketplace, and we were delivering to consumers that were looking for snacks that were, a little less calorie dense and, and a little more. Popcorn is a whole grain. We funded some organic popcorn research out of the University of Minnesota so we could learn as much as we could about it. And, we learned a lot of really good things. It's a pretty good snack, and we felt really good about feeding our children this, and it felt congruent with us in terms of our lifestyle, and to hear other people like are passionate about it, enjoy it, love
Beyond
it.
passionate. Like downright excited, like rooting for a baseball team or a football team or the Vikings. I read, and is this true, that in the first 9 or 10 years, you had your cell phone on the back of the package here for anybody who had a complaint or a concern? I did. Tell us about some people calling your cell phone. Tell us about that. And what did you learn from that?
Well, I knew that if we wanted to have a chance, like I wanted to kind of set a tone and just say, if there are problems, I want them to come to me, because we were still small at that time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure they were fixed, because I knew that I could take care, because I knew there were going to be problems. I knew issues were going to rise for this and that. And I kind of wanted to set the tone too for the rest of the staff, how we're committed to service. There was things that we hammered all the time. It was like, great product, great service. This is how we're going to live. We are going to produce the best product. We're going to have incredible service. And I think just in the beginning, it was like I wanted to kind of figure out how this works. Like, okay, how many calls am I getting? Who's going to take care of it? And eventually, we were able to build a team to manage that. But I was able to kind of have clarity on this is what needs to be done, because I've been getting calls. I mean, I'd get calls a lot.
Like people, I understand people be at the store and dial the number and ask you, like, is that how you guys got gluten-free and non-GMO?
Yes,
Is that
yes,
right? Understand?
absolutely.
Moms would say, is this gluten-free? And they're calling you directly?
Yeah, I mean, at times that happened. I mean, all kinds of, not crazy, but it was,
you don't have enough salt, or we want more salt. I mean, it was direct consumer feedback. And this was before social media, right? Like, so this was how we got close access to the people that had questions for us about the product.
Wow.
And, it could be a trucker looking for a dock time. It could be a consumer that had a complaint because they like their popcorn saltier. It could be a mom with a question like, is this certified GMO because I have a child that has an allergy and I just need to know.
And you were one of the first. Were you one of the first non-GMO?
This one was the first branded non-GMO popcorn in the marketplace.
Wow, fantastic! So you're first as well. So now you got a new brand, a new name. It's no longer a question you're going to make it. Things are taking off. What year is this?
2013.
13. Okay. And tell me where do you go from there? And how did you divide labor? Because the business must be growing geometrically. How did you guys divide the labor at that stage as well?
Well, we probably had maybe 120 employees by then, maybe 160 employees.
Okay.
Dan was like sort of expert at like this, working with the sales guys and operations, and I kind of led a marketing piece of it. And when we took private equity, that's when I retired from nursing, and when we...
So you didn't retire from nursing for how many years into this business?
10.
Wow. And didn't pay yourselves until almost 10? Is that?
That was the first time I took a paycheck, was when we brought on private equity.
Wow.
So I didn't feel like we could afford it. I mean, I'd rather pay somebody else. And, I was a nurse for 28 years, and I loved it, and I always imagined I would be a nurse. And so I was 50 years old, but the private equity came and said, hey, we're investing in you too, and we really want you to be there full time, both of you.
Plus, you're now Angie, so probably on the road shows, I assume they would have to use you up there, right?
Yes.
The marketing part.
So it made me take a step back and say, okay, I'm at 50. Am I willing to learn something new and dive all in and, pull the rug out from underneath me, this career that I had chosen? And I just said, yeah, I'm ready to learn. And I trusted Dan, and Dan trusted me. And
it was really hard though, because up until that point, I had Angie worked on the periphery. I mean, she worked a lot, but it was on the periphery, and I kind of ran the day to day. And all of a sudden, she left her job, and we were working in the office together, and we stepped on each other's toes quite
all
a bit.
the time.
Did you guys have some fights?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
What kept you going through all that? Because it's a lot of stress. Even when success comes initially, it can be a lot of stress because the demands are even higher. Everybody thinks it's going to be easier, but the demands are higher, and there's more on the line.
That's right.
So tell me, how did you manage that as a couple? Because I think there's a lot of couples out here trying to figure out how to do that even now.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
It was hard.
Really hard.
What kept you together? Because a lot of couples will build a business and then they split, and you guys didn't split. You built a business and came closer together.
Yeah. I think we did our share of fighting, for sure. There was a couple times I think our assistant just came and closed the door because we were yelling too loud, in the office. And, I think at the end of the day, and I'll speak for myself, we had an ultimately trustworthy relationship and did trust each other and loved each other, loved our children, kept remembering why we did this. We're doing this for our family and for our children. And then I think we just kind of would take time outs kind of from each other and just kind of cool off or, and
come back with a straight head.
And not that we ever really got our head on straight completely. But, we just kind of said, we'll just need to get through this. We'll just need to get through this. And we'll find a time where maybe we can, it be a little bit better when things aren't as stressful.
I mean, we talk to couples a lot. We talk to startups a lot. And it is really hard. And I think one of the things that Angie and I talked about, oftentimes, like, if, what we've done now is we've sought help over the years for someone that can help us work through things that, are probably buried 20 years ago or 15 years ago that we didn't have time to address.
Yes.
And we feel fortunate that we can address them now.
Yes.
But like, recommendations to people is like, if we had it over again, we would have brought someone in and tried to find some help to help us work through some of these things so we could because we were fortunate that we both came from strong families and that we hung on because it could have went south at any time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So your love for each other, your persistence, your family backgrounds, and your vision of going back to why you originally did this together, to be together, to take care of your kids. And so tell me, did you go to more than one VC, or did you go to a second larger VC?
Yeah, so the Sherbrooke Capital Private Equity, which is a small shop private equity, their investment thesis was, to double growth and look at 3 to 5 years to sell to a strategic. Well, the popcorn category wasn't proven out quite yet. We more than doubled our revenue. They bought in when we were about 11 million. And they decided to get an investment banker. We all hired Piper Jaffray at the time in 2014.
Yep.
And then TPG Growth out of San Francisco.
Oh, yeah, they're fantastic.
Yes. They decided they wanted to purchase us.
Wow.
And they felt like we could build the business again. And so in 2014, we sold the business to TPG Growth in 2014. And at that point, Dan and I rolled over an investment. We sat on the board. We built a new management leadership team.
Yes.
And TPG Growth helped us reformulate a new board and built the company again.
Yes.
Doubled the value of the company again in 3 years.
Wow.
And then sold to ConAgra Brands in 2017.
For $250 million, ladies and gentlemen, out of that experience in 16 years. Unbelievable.
Yeah. For popcorn.
Oh, yes. So when you did the first, when TPG took over, did you have distributions for your employees, or did it wait until, and they got a second one again when was it, 2017?
2017, yes.
Wow. And so the people, like the couple that worked for you for $4 an hour each, they must have really cleaned up pretty nicely then. Yeah. What was it like to be able to distribute those funds to all these people that you love, that worked with you through the tough times?
The greatest.
The best 3 days of my career.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It was.
It was so emotional. I mean, it's still emotional, like when we think about it, because so many people helped us, get to that point, and, that stuck with us when it was like, I've heard Chris talking, there's so many days you just you even ask, why are these people even sticking with us? We don't know where this thing's going. But it was such a powerful experience for Ange and I. It just hit us, and then we got to do it again with some more people and it's
incredible.
Giving is like the greatest. We tell our kids all the time, it's like there's nothing greater you can do than give. You give a
secret
smile,
to living is giving,
give a
right?
door, open a door. It's just it helps the soul, right?
Yeah, it really does. Trust me, I understand. It's the most greatest gift in the world, especially when those people have been with you through all that time, and pushed with you like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, when the deal is getting close, and you never know if the deal is going to close until the actual phone, all the lawyers sign off and they hang up, and when that happens, I mean, the first time it happened, I just started bawling. Because for the first time, I knew we weren't going to lose the house,
the first time,
that our kids are going to go to college without.
Hell, you could buy a college. What the hell are you talking about?
The first time, I mean, and it was such a relief, because it's a marathon, that feels like you're running at a sprint pace, actually. Yes. And then that second time, well, actually, the first time we sat down with each of each of the employees to explain to them, because we had distributed equity, and we said, we don't know if this is going to actually be worth anything or not, but if it is, you know, you have like a 0.25% or you have a 2% or whatever that was.
That's right.
And so then when we sat down and explained and pushed the, like, this is what this percent is worth to you, we, on the other side of the table, and, you know, we need your bank account and all this because there's, you know, it's going to be distributed tomorrow if this goes through. People on the other side of the table just broke down. You know, they just like, and what we said, it just kept ringing through my ears. What we said earlier is we wanted our success to be our employees' success. And we didn't know how. We didn't know exactly what that meant, but we put that out in the world, and it happened. You know, it just happened.
I think tying in with what Ange said, you know, like, you know, getting people to commit to your business as much as you do is the hardest thing. Like getting buyers, getting brokers, getting distributors, getting employers. And what do you do every second of every day to get your team to connect? You know, what relationships are you building? What are you doing in your offices, in your plants? What are you doing with your brokers so that they are like as passionate as you are? And it is so hard to do, but that's I think a huge part of why we had success is we built these incredible relationships and we committed to them everything, you know, and they committed back. And, you know, that's what happens then when they commit back. We commit all of a sudden this incredible day or a couple days of like, you know,
joy.
life-changing.
People were just joyful.
Yeah.
So
you know,
beautiful.
yeah,
So
it was so good. It was so good.
I'm fortunate to have several companies, but my original company is an ESOP, so all the employees own the company. And you know, we have people here now that work in the mailroom that get $2 million. You have people that are getting $20 million at the time that they retire. It's one of the most incredible things you could imagine.
What a gift.
I know directly. I'm curious about this. I asked you this as well. Entrepreneurs, you go on this 16-year journey. You have no idea it's going to end up the way it is. You take a product that has a lot of competition called popcorn and somehow sell it for $250 million. And then what? You know, it's like, did, you know, the next 4 or 5 years here, did it become about taking time with your family? Did it become about mentoring other people? Do you have the bug to start another business? What's your mindset? At first, I think you want to take a rest or vacation after working
We did.
22-hour days around the clock. But
we stopped for, we both committed to each other when we sold, because Ange stayed on for a couple years to
advise.
Advise.
Yeah,
and I was able to step out, and I was just toasted. I mean, I was, you know, I needed to take a step out. So, but, you know, part of my DNA is to go. And I mean, just that first 6 months of 2018, you know, it was really hard just to set back. And it's like, well, what am I doing? Where are my emails? What am I, you know, like, but we did a pretty good job of that the first couple of years. It's really what's been joyful for me is the last couple of years I've really gone back to my passion, you know, which is, you know, dealing with kids, equity issues,
that's beautiful.
You know,
A lot of
schools,
mentorships.
mentorship.
Yeah.
It's just joy. Like it does. It's not because I don't think either Ange and I feel like we can go back into the grind again. We always talk about it.
You don't need to.
No, but there's so many entrepreneurs, like they can't help themselves,
Yes.
like, and myself included at times.
Yes.
And I think where I found my joy is just committing to what I was passionate about when I was a younger person, and I had to step away.
Yes.
And it's awesome. We're in a great spot. Ange can kind of share her.
Yeah. Well, I mentor women and entrepreneurs. We've
Lucky women, lucky entrepreneurs.
well, I'll just say, you know, I appreciated the people that were accessible to us, and we want to be that for others.
Yes.
I'm chairing a board of a food company called Prospera Foods, which its mission is to elevate, you know, use the supply chain to relieve poverty. And so we're working with small shareholder farmers in Central America, and we're bringing products to market in ingredients like cassava flour that get sold to brands. And because we've been in the food food business, we've been able to leverage some of our contacts to get, doors open and open up the U.S. market to people who live off of less than $2 a day. And
that's beautiful.
And so we're working in things that we feel passionate about, and then using our contacts and our network to elevate others. I think that's what, in whatever way feels right to us.
You all three are such extraordinary human beings. You're not only extraordinary entrepreneurs, you're extraordinary human beings. I'm touched by how much you care and how much you give back. All three of you, you're extraordinary. Can we first have a big hand for Dan and Angie, first of all? Stand up and let them know how you feel. Oh, yes. Let's do 3 questions for Dan and Angie, and then we'll do 3 for the 3 of you, and we'll wrap up if that works for you. Okay. All right, let's take 3 questions for Dan and Angie first. Raise your hand. You got a question? Somebody grab them up there for me if you would, and bring them on screen. Here we go. Give it up for Javier. Javier, where are you guys in the world?
Miami, just a couple of minutes away.
Here in Florida?
Miami.
Florida, Miami. Give it up for them. What's your question?
Thank you so much. This is great. Hold on. I'm here with my mother. I'm trying to fix this.
Nice to see you.
Thank you so much. The story, Chris and Angie's story, and all of you guys. And it's such a beautiful experience that you guys are giving us because it's so powerful. And my question is, Angie, you mentioned that you sold to TPG and they came in, and then you kind of resold again. I would like to know, what's the process? You sold for $250 million. How did that work? If you were working with TPG and things like that from a business standpoint, I would like to understand that a little better.
Yeah, so in 2014, TPG Growth, which is one of the largest, it may be the largest private equity company in the world, was interested in snacking platform. And so they purchased us, not at $250 million, they purchased us for $125 million in 2014. And we distributed liquid equity to all of our employees because they did a full purchase. And then we reinvested in the company and sat on the board. We formulated a new board, and then we built the company again. They also helped us build a new plant in Reno, Nevada to help us with greater distribution. And then we hired another investment banker. This time we hired Houlihan Lokey, which is a specialist in marketing to other businesses as strategics, food and beverage. And they then marketed our product. We did the same sort of road shows you did in tech. We did to large food companies. And then there's a process, where I call it dating. You do business dating. You date these other companies and you build a data room so that they can look at every piece of information and asset that you have. And then you kind of see if you're a good fit. And really, what you're building in that end stage is that intangible value and the brand connection that you have with consumers. And if they feel you have a brand that can live on beyond the founder stepping away, you've got a good shot of getting a strategic buyer.
And how long did you continue to advise afterwards for the company?
2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm still under a non-compete, so.
Yeah, they don't want to compete with you two.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Give them a hand. Thank you, Javier. Let's go for another question.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Give it up for Aaron.
Oh, close. Hi.
Aaron, where are you in the world?
St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis, Missouri, ladies and gentlemen. What's your question, Aaron?
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing these great stories. Really encouraging and powerful. I'm just curious, one of the things that we've learned is to set goals, to really do some incantations about accomplishing those goals. I'm just curious, did you have a goal in mind of what you wanted to accomplish? Or did you say, I'm going to sell this business for $250 million? what goals or things did you tell yourself?
And I'd like to add to that, if I may. I understood you had a dream at one point, like a Willy Wonka dream I heard about popcorn. Will you share that as well?
Factory. Yeah, I mean, it's a good message to listen to your dreams. And, you know, I write my dreams down all the time, everyone that I remember. And yeah, no, I think maybe Dan and I thought about things a little bit differently, but I think what this dream did is just kind of in my waking world.
What was the dream?
It was a dream that we had a popcorn factory, and it was kind of like Willy Wonka. But, you know, it was kind of odd and quirky and fun. But I was like, oh, well, maybe we could have a popcorn factory. And this is when we were still popping outside in blizzards, you know?
That's
so,
awesome.
you know, it was my unconscious saying you could do something more, right?
Yes.
But I think for us, in terms of goal setting, I mean, that sort of, there's a lot of material in your brain that can lead you in directions, you know, and that was maybe one piece of the information that just said, hey, this could be more than you ever imagined. And then I think Dan and I, we didn't methodically set goals until we had private equity on board.
Yeah, I think, like, I never had any understanding that you could build a business and sell it. Like, I just grew up, like, if we're going to do this, we're going to work hard and we're going to have goals. I mean, Ange and I would kind of set yearly goals maybe after we once got going, but it was all about how are we building the foundation? Like, what are we doing here so when we get up to here and we have cracks, that the foundation is strong enough? And I think, like, for us, it was about, like, just empowering our employees and creating a safe environment for them to be who they are and to be great. And we were just, like, conscious of that from the get-go. I don't know why. Like, we had no business experience, but I think we were just focused on that. And then as time went along, when we heard that you could sell a company, we started kind of expanding our beliefs. But I think if you focus really, or, you know, on the foundation and organically what you want to do and where you want to get to, all the other stuff happens.
It's focusing again, just like Chris was talking about, on over delivering for the client.
Yeah.
What's their experience? How do I turn them into raving fans? How do I deliver more for them than anyone else in the marketplace? And then your world starts to expand to see what's really possible. Great question, Aaron. Thank you. Give him a hand.
Thank you.
One more question for Angie and Dan. Here we go. Ariel Steele. Give it up for Ariel. Where are you, Ariel? Are you Ariel?
I'm Kaylee. I'm Eric's daughter.
I see that. Where are you guys in the world?
We are in Colorado.
Colorado, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for Colorado.
All right.
What's your question? And may I ask, how old are you first, may I ask?
I'm 10 years old, about
10 years old. Give her a hand. That's awesome.
She's 10.
What's your question?
My question is, how did you feel when you actually got the project out and you became like a billionaire?
How did you feel when you finally sold the business?
How did we feel when we sold the business? Pretty joyful. We felt relief in some way. Like, it was like sending your child, like you raised your child to be successful and happy, and then you're sending them off to college. That's kind of what it felt like. And it felt like, like you were ready to see your child soar in their own world and their own life. And so it felt really satisfactory. I mean, in a way that we felt like we did our job.
Great question.
Yeah, very good question. Are you considering being in business yourself someday?
Yeah. So me and my brother went to do a restaurant thing together. So that's
very exciting. Well, congratulations. Thank
Congrats.
You. Give her a hand, everybody. Thank you very much. Annabelle. Give it up for Annabelle. Annabelle, where are you in the world?
I'm in Michigan.
You're in Michigan? Is that what I heard? Give her a hand. Very nice. Who do you have a question for?
Oh, yes. Actually, three guests.
Okay, great.
And especially, so it sounds like it's been a very long journey and quite difficult at times, especially for Dan and Angie, you know, working together and fighting and as a couple. And I think, you know, I don't know what I would do. I would probably walk away. But so the
We thought
my
about that at
question
time.
is,
Yeah.
So,
my
But we
question
kept
is,
thinking
what is-
anything is possible, right?
That's right.
So what is your why for, you know, your purpose, or like, what is your why to keep going? What keeps you moving?
What kept each of you going during the tough times?
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
We'll start down there.
Chris, do you have it?
Gosh, I think
'Cause you had a lot of tough times. We've forgotten already by now for how many years.
for me, it was I wanted something to just that would live on its own. Yeah, I would create it and it would just keep going. And and if I could just go to sleep, I love the idea I could go to sleep and then just people would just use it. And that's what kept me going. Is that I wanted that to. I had this vision for what it would be with Shazam, and just had to just. There was always light at the end of the tunnel. And no matter how hard the times were, I was like, yeah, but if we just do this, if we just get that deal, there's always a little bit more light around the corner. That was it. It's just that desire to see it live its own life.
How's it feel now to know billions of people, I guess would be a pretty accurate number, use your product every day of their life and it brings them joy?
Yeah, it feels great. I think some would like a little more salt in it.
But you didn't give them your phone number, did you? That's nice. How about for the two of you? During those you had plenty of those tough times.
Yeah.
What kept you going?
You know, I think for, you know, our focus as we went along, so many people became reliant on us, you know, for the job, you know, and, you know, what we were trying to do is offer opportunity to people to not only have a job, but to grow and empower them to be leaders.